All right. Welcome back to Scripture Time. Welcome back to whole Bible reading with Tad Inoue. All right. Genesis, we're now on, this is Genesis chapter 4. It's a relatively short chapter, so I'm going to read it. I'll read it in the NET Bible translation, as you know, and then I'll go through a deep dive, and then I'll go through, and I've taken my notes, so I'll be reading from here, and then I'll be answering some questions, some reflexive questions. I'll go over some non-biblical sources, of course, and then I'll do some reflection questions, and then a prayer. All right, here we go. I've taken my notes. Here we go, Genesis chapter 4, Cain and Abel. So we're at some exciting parts. We've gotten through creation. We've gotten through when Adam and Eve has been cast out, human creation, and then Adam and Eve's cast out. And now we are at the point of Cain and Abel. So the Adam and Eve are not in the Garden of Eden anymore. And now we pick up in chapter 4, Cain and Abel, verse 1. Now the man had marital relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "I have created a man just as the Lord did." Then she gave birth to his brother Abel. Abel took care of the flocks while Cain cultivated the ground. At the designated time, Cain brought some of the fruit from the ground for an offering to the Lord, but Abel brought some of his firstborn of his flock, even the fattest of them. And the Lord was pleased with Abel and his offering. But with Cain, his offering, he was not pleased. So Cain became very angry, and his expression was very downcast. And the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why is your expression downcast? Is it not true that if you do what is right, you'll be fine? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. It desires to dominate you, but you must subdue it." Cain said to his brother Abel, Let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. The first murder. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" And he replied, "I do not know. Am I my brother's guardian?" And in some translations, am I my brother's keeper? That's where we get that line from. Let's see. Verse 10. But the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. So now you are banished from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you try to cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its best for you. You will be a homeless wanderer. You'll be a homeless wanderer on the earth." Then Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is too great to endure. Look, you are driving me off the land today, and I must hide from your presence. I will be a homeless wanderer on the earth. Whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "All right then, if anyone kills Cain, Cain will be avenged 7 times as much." Then the Lord put a special mark on Cain so that no one who found him would strike him down. So Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain had marital relations with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was building a city, and he named the city after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mehujael. Mehujael was the father of Methuselah. And Methuselah, these names get really, really hard. And Methuselah was the father of Lamech. Lamech took 2 wives for himself and named the first Adah, and named the second was Zillah. Adah gave birth to Jabal. He was the first of those who lived in the tents and kept livestock. The name of his brother was Jabal, and he was the first of all who played the harp and the flute. Now Zillah also gave birth to Tubal-Cain, who heated metal and shaped all kinds of tools made of bronze and iron. Sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to me. You wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is to be avenged 7 times as much, then Lamech 77 times. And Adam had marital relations with his wife again. And she gave birth to a son. His name was Seth, saying, God has given me another child in place of Abel because Cain killed him. And the son was also born of Seth, whom he named Inoue. At that time, people began worshiping the Lord. All right, now that kind of ends the chapter. Now we're going to go into the deep dive. And here are my notes for the deep dive. Again, here we go. I'm going to try, let's see. Oh, well, I usually go over some of these things kind of fast, so I'm going to try to slow down, and I will point when I come across topics that I mentioned in the text, and that we can cross-reference and we can kind of sort of tie together. Let's dig into the story of Genesis 4. Okay, it's a dramatic shift from Eden. This chapter begins us straight into real human life: work, worship, jealousy, sin, and consequence. At the beginning, we meet the first children born to Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Abel becomes the shepherd, and Cain works the soil. Their offerings to God introduce us to the idea of worship, but also what happens when the heart behind it isn't right. We're not told exactly why God accepted Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's, but we are told that Cain got angry, which reveals a deeper issue. This isn't just sibling rivalry, it's about a condition of Cain's heart. God talks to Cain like a parent would, gently but seriously warning him. He says, sin is crouching at the door. That's such a powerful image, sin like a predator waiting to take control, and God says, you must subdue it. It tells us early on that people aren't helpless victims. We're called to wrestle with our choices, but Cain doesn't subdue it. He murders his brother in the field, and God comes looking again. And just like he did in Eden, where's your brother? He's not asking for information. He's offering Cain a chance to come clean, but Cain dodges with the now famous line, "Am I my brother's keeper?" It's cold, and God doesn't let it slide. God doesn't kill Cain; He marks him. That's justice, but also mercy. Cain becomes a wanderer, but he's not without protection. That's interesting. Then the story shifts and fast. Cain builds a city. His family line expands. We meet people who invent livestock, economies, music, metalwork. Civilization is also blooming, even out of a broken beginning. But we also see a rise in violence. Lamech brags about killing a man, but he takes 2 wives and introduces revenge that goes beyond Cain's punishment. It's like sin is multiplied across generations. But then hope breaks through. Adam and Eve have another son, Seth, and Seth's line begins to call on the name of the Lord. The first mention of public worship after the fall. That's huge. It really is that we have this public worship going on, and it's directed at the Lord as well. Genesis 4 is raw and human, but it is not hopeless. It shows us that even when people fall, when sin, anger, and violence seem to take over, God's redemptive thread still moves forward. So now we're going to go through that. It was a relatively short chapter, but a fun one. Well, it was an interesting one. We'll call it fun because the stories are interesting, but they're quite terrifying in real life if you really think about it. Cain killing his brother. This is brother on brother. It makes you wonder. It just makes you wonder about how, if there was any instruction on how brothers and siblings were supposed to be raised together by God or by anybody. Okay, so non-biblical scholarly sources. These are commentaries from other people outside of biblical authors. John Walton, the NIV application commentary of Genesis, he writes, and this is just a summary of it. Walton emphasizes that the story of Cain and Abel isn't about which offering is better, but about their attitudes and relational posture towards God. He also notes that Cain's city building shows humanity's creative potential even after failure, but without God's presence, it spirals towards corruption. So while man is sort of godlike by his creative efforts, he's tainted with sin, and this taints his creations as well. This is not, this is the way the second non-biblical scholarly source is Tertullian against Marconian, the book 2. Tertullian reflects on Cain's punishment as a balance of justice and grace. He connects the mark of Cain to the divine seal of mercy. He also contrasts Cain's exile with Christ's invitation to come back home. The early church saw echoes of redemption even in Cain's story. Now, here's the two reflective questions. Personal connection question, and whoops. Okay. Reflection questions. Number 1: what part of Cain and Abel's story hit you emotionally? Jealousy, rejection, guilt, or something else? Why and why? Well, the part that hits me the most is that, as I said earlier, that Cain and Abel are brothers. They're the first brothers, as a matter of fact, first brothers in human history, and one kills the other. So it's really that to me, the violence, the kind of and and a word kind of like that now, over this tribal idea of wanting acceptance. Cain and Abel both wanting acceptance from God, wanting their sacrifices to be good in the sight of the Lord. Of course, Cain's sacrifice is not good, and he slays Abel, and then he lies to God when he asked about it. So it's the jealousy, and it's the malice, the deep malice to be able to do harm upon a sibling. To me, strikes, because I have a very, very close relationship with my twin brother, and I would never even strike him. When we grew up, I never even thought about hitting him, let alone striking him. We didn't wrestle. We didn't do that. If we were getting close quarters, we were playing. So, to me, when I see brothers, brothers are special because I have a special relationship with my brother, and I know how wonderful it can be if you take it like that. And he's added so much value to my life, and I wonder if Cain felt the absence of his brother Abel, and the absence of some of the things that his brother might have added into his life. They must have grown up together to some degree, so they must have had some kind of close relationship. And it's hard not to do that, especially being like some of the first humans on the planet. So, number 2, faith action. How does God's warning to Cain, sin is crouching at the door, shape the how you think about our own struggles with sin today? How does God? Okay, so God is actually warning him that sin is right there on his doorstep, peering in, almost ready to pounce on him, so to speak. So I think what this is sort of telling us is that we all must be careful of how we view sin and how we treat it in our lives. Do we treat it with kid gloves? Do we take caution? How are we treating it? Because it's sin that brings us to all the places that God doesn't want us to be, so to speak. It's sin that pulls us from the garden, from His presence on a regular basis. He's actually, what also strikes me in this is that these first humans, they actually get to talk to God more. They actually get to talk to God. Cain and Abel, all of these early humans, Adam and Eve, all get to, they don't mention seeing the face of God, but they certainly mention talking to God directly, and that is pretty cool. All right, so now for the, not only is it pretty cool, but it's, you would think, like, we get to go to church and we get to hear ministers and we get to study the Bible, we get to hear other sages' words, and we get to put those things into action. They oftentimes have power in our lives, but they actually heard it directly from God, which would even be more powerful. So it strikes me unusual that they would try to hide things, and they wouldn't, but what would they know? That's the question I would ask myself. What would they know about God and the presence of God? What would they know about God's omniscience? What would they know about the power that he holds? What would they know about those things? Would they think he did, or do they think that he has limitations? So maybe they think they can hide these things from him. Do they think they can do that? That is the question I would have. If I were one of these people, these early humans, if I had just the inkling that this ultimate power, this ultimate reality that we call God, if it had created the whole universe and I knew that, and it created me, I don't think I would want to lie. Just because I would be fearful. I'd just be fear that if he can create everything and create me, he could sure the heck take me away. So that's what I would think. All right, let's have our closing prayer. All right, Lord, thank you for telling the truth in your word. Not just the beautiful parts, but the broken ones too. I see myself in Cain, in the anger, in the insecurity, in the way I sometimes want to blame instead of my own. Excuse me, in the way I sometimes want to blame instead of my own heart. But I also hear you saying gently, you can master this. Help me believe that. When sin crouches at the door, teach me how to rise above it. Thank you for showing the mercy even when we mess up. Thank you for protecting even the guilty for the sin-created beauty out of darkness, out of brokenness. And thank you for the hope that shows all at the end of this chapter that we just read, that even when things fall apart, you're still calling us back to worship, to remember your name, to begin again. Let me walk in that kind of hope today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thank you very much, folks. And tomorrow we'll be on to the next video will be chapter 4. Thank you very much.